In the cold silence above Earth's atmosphere, a fleet of living warships blotted out the stars. Shaped like obsidian serpents coiled in eternal hunger, the Gralax Armada held its formation, weapons primed, engines humming like a hive of anticipation. Admiral Vershak of the Ninth Conquest Order stood before his fleet's central mine core, watching Earth rotate below. Blue and green, tranquil, primitive, it would burn quickly. "This will be swift," he declared to the assembled command. "Nexus, the humans are barely out of their cradle." No one questioned him. Why would they? Humanity, catalogued by Gralax intelligence as a Tier 2 anomaly, was centuries away from serious spaceflight. They had only just established orbital colonies, still relied on combustion engines, and barely grasped quantum theory. They weren't ready, not for this. Not for the Gralax, who had consumed empires and rewritten star systems. But Earth didn't. Blink dot within minutes of the first orbital disruptions, satellite blackouts, kinetic strikes on major communication hubs, something unexpected happened. Earth unified. The squabbling of nations fell silent. From low Earth orbit to the depths of their oceans, the humans responded with a precision that set Vershak slightly off balance. He expected panic. What he saw was orchestration. A fractured species does not coordinate like that, not without a plan. Not without history. The Terran ascendancy declared itself within hours. Born of former governments, tech conglomerates, and forgotten alliances, it issued a simple message to the galaxy. "We are aware of your presence. You are not the first." To most of the Gralax, the message was laughable. Empty bravado. But not to all. Commander Tulake, head of the Gralax Archaeological Division, sat inside a massive deep space observation craft orbiting Mars. His team had been investigating ruins found beneath the Martian crust, carbon dated to before Earth's recorded history. The assumption was that some pre-human species had died here, perhaps displaced by the arrival of humanity. But the runes they'd uncovered told a different story. Etched into metal walls beneath 1,000 meters of regolith were symbols. Latin. Not just symbols, words, sentences, orders, records. 1. Slab read. Project Soul Sentinel. Final bastion for the First Flame, entrusted to the bloodline of Terra. Talek felt cold. Not from fear, but something older. Recognition. "Admiral." He transmitted across the fleet-wide comms, voice urgent. "I need authorization to decode what we've found beneath Mars." "You may catalog your relics later, Telek," Vershak responded irritably. "The humans will be dust within the day." "But sir, these relics are written in the same linguistic structure as the Elder Scripts." There was silence on the line. The Elder Scripts. Every advanced species knew the term. Ancient, indecipherable languages found scattered across the galaxy, predating all known civilizations. No one knew who the authors were. No one had ever managed to trace them back to a specific world. Until now. On Earth's surface, the Gralax began their descent. Strike teams swept through major cities, expecting terror and helplessness. What they found were blackout zones, urban sprawls where every signal, every scanner was scrambled. Troops vanished, surveillance returned only static. Gralax command assumed interference, sabotage. Then came the drones. Small, sleek, and disturbingly agile. They didn't match any known human technology. Their design hinted at something older. Something refined over millennia, not decades. In New Patagonia, a Gralax recon squad entered an abandoned research facility. What they found inside was not human-made, at least, not by modern human standards. The walls pulsed with energy, reacting to the Gralax presence. Symbols emerged in glowing script, rearranging themselves into messages the aliens could not read, but which seemed oddly familiar. One soldier, Jiden, reached out and touched the wall. His body convulsed. For a moment, his mind was filled with images. 1,000 galaxies burning, fleets larger than planets, voices like thunder issuing commands in languages he somehow understood. And then darkness. When the squad was recovered, those who could be recovered, they spoke of visions, of humans in armor of black starlight, standing over the corpses of monstrous, ancient beings, of battles not yet fought. I saw them, one whispered, not as they are, as they were. Vershik dismissed it all, hallucinations, psychic interference. He issued orders to accelerate the purge protocol. But Telek knew better. His teams had uncovered more slabs, more ruins. And one message kept repeating, across Mars, across the moon, and now, in deep ocean vaults being disturbed by Gralek's excavation. Drones, the first flame sleeps beneath Terra, do not awaken it. No one in the Gralek's command could explain why these ruins, written in the Elder tongue, spoke of Earth. No one could explain why the walls reacted to human DNA, or why human brainwaves could interface with the machines. No one could explain why the moon wasn't a satellite, but a construct. Telek stood alone on the bridge of his cruiser, staring down at Earth. He tapped a few controls, bringing up a series of overlapping energy signatures forming around the planet. Admiral, he said, voice tight. They didn't invent these systems. They're reactivating them. What are you implying, Telek? They're not the newcomers, Admiral. We are. A silence fell across the command net. Too late. The Graleks realized what they were truly facing, and the first flame was stirring. The first kinetic lances had reduced orbital defense stations to dust, just as predicted. Gralek's cruisers carved through Earth skies, blackening the atmosphere with trails of destruction. Major world cities fell dark under the electronic silence of their comms jammers. From orbit, it looked like the beginning of every successful planetary pacification campaign in the Gralek's conquest logs. But something was wrong. Too quiet. Not quiet from fear. Quiet like preparation. Admiral Vershik dismissed the unease. Earth was merely adapting. A brief resistance, nothing more. Send in ground suppression teams. Burn them down to surrender. Yet on the surface, suppression teams were meeting. Friction. In rural Russia, a Gralek's platoon vanished after entering an old Soviet bunker. Inside the recovered drone footage, before the feed cut, were strange carvings. Ancient human glyphs, some predating the Cyrillic alphabet, scrawled beside what looked unmistakably like star charts. In Nairobi, drone scouts mapped a dense subterranean network beneath the city. Nothing in Earth's archives hinted at its existence. The tunnels were too uniform, too strategic. Not recent construction. A Gralek's xeno-engineer was the first to say it aloud. These aren't new. They're older than their civilization. Something about that made the officers shift uncomfortably. Still, the campaign pressed forward. Gralek's planetary AI predicted total Earth collapse in 70 hours. That prediction would not survive the next 6. The first anomaly occurred over Antarctica. A Gralek ship, a light scout frigate, was tasked with scanning magnetic anomalies deep in the pole's crust. Instead, it disappeared, not destroyed, erased, no wreckage, no debris. Just gone. Minutes later, a message was transmitted across all Gralek's frequencies. Though no human source was identified, it simply read, Operation Reclaim Memory has been initialized. Begin Phase 2. The phrase meant nothing to the Graleks. But for human command officers inside Earth's last space-based command module, buried within the Arctic, it was a trigger. Across the world, long-dormant installations came alive. The American NORAD complex, once decommissioned, opened its ancient steel jaws. In Siberia, beneath Lake Baikal, towers of obsidian metal rose from the water like the teeth of forgotten titans. South of Cairo, under sand and secrecy, a vault, sealed since before recorded history, blinked with power. Every human-born leader who saw these signals stared with a strange stillness. Not shock, not awe. Recognition. General Arya Chun, Supreme Commander of the Terran Ascendancy, whispered to her tactical aide, "They're back." "Who's back, ma'am?" She didn't answer. The Gralax now faced a different kind of resistance. Not chaos, but synchronization. Human squadrons began appearing where no transports had been. Artillery emerged from canyons where there were no bases. Electronic warfare protocols that should have taken decades to develop began jamming Gralax signals in real time. One command cruiser recorded a human satellite obsolete by all appearances, realigning itself, beaming what appeared to be an impossible stream of quantum-entangled data to Earth. A Gralax cyber warfare drone attempted to intercept the signal. It melted. Literally. Onboard systems overheated and detonated without a clear source of overload. Later review showed the satellite wasn't transmitting data. It was communing with something deep inside the Earth. Commander Telek, still orbiting Mars, began piecing the evidence together. The ruins beneath Mars spoke of watchers, of hidden stations, of failsafes left by the flame-bearers. He hadn't understood the scale. But now, he was beginning to. "I think," he muttered to himself, eyes darting over the holograms of human responses, "we didn't just miss history. We are standing in its grave." His assistant frowned. "Sir?" Telek turned. "What if Earth wasn't the beginning of their species, but the last refuge of their civilization?" Meanwhile on Earth, Gralax soldiers continued to report hallucinations. At first, Command dismissed it as psychological stress, but the reports were too consistent, too specific. They all spoke of the same thing: humans surrounded by flames that did not burn, eyes glowing gold, speaking in voices that echoed with multiple tones, as if more than one consciousness spoke through them. Soldiers described seeing stars that shouldn't exist, visions of battles in places no one had ever mapped. Some troops began turning on each other, muttering about the First War and the return of the throne. Entire squads laid down their arms, too terrified to continue. The worst case came from Johannesburg. A Gralax high captain named Zaro attempted to capture a human child suspected of coordinating local resistance. The child did not speak. Instead, she placed her hand on Zaro's armor. The footage cut out after that. But what was recovered from his helmet's logs was chilling. His last words were not in any known Gralax dialect. They were in flawless, ancient elder tongue. "They are not children. They are memory wearing flesh." Back on the Gralax command ship, Vershik reviewed the data, furious. "This is disinformation, nothing more." Yet as he watched the footage again, especially the eyes of the human child, his stomach turned golden light. Not a reflection, not special effects, a glow from within. For the first time in his career, Vershik did not feel superior. He felt hunted. On Mars, Telek leaned over a control panel, slowly activating the last recovered slab. It displayed a message, written in both the Elder script and modern Latin. "If you are reading this, they have come. We left this world not because we lost, but because we had no more to learn. If they awaken, remember, they do not return in wrath. They return in remembrance." The Gralax had believed themselves to be conquerors. They were standing on the homeworld of the galaxy's oldest gods, and those gods were waking up. The Gralax fleet adjusted its orbital position to begin atmospheric compression strikes, a standard pacification measure designed to force surrender through overwhelming pressure waves. Admiral Vershik wanted no more surprises, no more hallucinations, no more superstitions infecting his troops. He was a warlord, not a priest. Yet for all the power he commanded, something gnawed at him. The way humans weren't behaving like prey. They didn't scatter. They organized. They didn't plead. They warned. His screens lit up again. Another anomaly. This time from Luna. Gralax mining drones had breached a deep fissure on the moon's far side, what they thought was a natural fault line. It wasn't. Beneath kilometers of rock, they found alloyed walls and control mechanisms that predated modern human metallurgy by at least 10,000 years. Then came the pulse. Every Gralax, Ship within the moon's orbital radius lost power for 3.3 seconds. No comms, no engines. No AI, just blackness out when the systems returned. One message appeared on every screen in the fleet. Access granted. Prime ident confirmed. And beneath it, the emblem, a burning tree wrapped in 7 rings of light identical to the ones found in elder ruins across dozens of star systems. Only now, it was traced to Earth. Back in Mars orbit, Commander Telek stared at the data stream. His mind, trained in the deep symbology of ancient cultures, felt the weight of realization crash over him. The elder symbols weren't just ruins, he whispered. They were breadcrumbs, all leading back to this planet. To these humans, Vershuk refused to retreat. These monkeys reverse-engineered something they don't understand. We destroy the core, now. But Telek wasn't so sure. He began analyzing the ancient languages again, translating deeper layers the AI had always classified as corrupted or metaphorical. He was wrong. They weren't metaphorical at all. They were warnings. Back on Earth, above the icy waters of the North Atlantic, something awoke beneath the waves. The UN Naval Archive listed it as Project Winterhold, a Cold War-era anomaly sealed off and forgotten by every global power. The world had moved on. Humanity forgot, but the Earth did not. Beneath that icy tomb, machines born of a different age stirred. Not just machines constructs. Sentient systems woven with neurotemporal threads that predated human civilization. In their dormant cores pulsed the neural signatures of the first flame, the ancient gestalt that had once guided the original Terran dominion eons ago. They had waited. And now, the signal had come out as Gralix dropships descended toward what they thought was an abandoned oil rig. It unfolded. The sea cracked open. Metal towers erupted from the depths like titans rising from myth. Not sleek, not modern. Ancient, but humming with power that defied conventional physics. One of the Gralix captains tried to lock weapons on the structure. The targeting system blinked once, then again, then melted. Literally. Human vessels small, nimble, forged of alloy and light emerged from the towers. Their markings didn't match any Earth military. Their propulsion systems were not chemical, not nuclear, not even quantum. They moved as if pulled by will. Inside those vessels sat humans. And something more. Their eyes shone with the same golden fire from Johannesburg. Their minds weren't like modern Earth soldiers. They remembered, and they came bearing orders. Activate Soul Sentinel. Deploy Ancient Protocol, Theta Prime. Across Earth, newly awakened defense stations, hidden within mountains, buried under cities, orbiting and disguised. Satellites responded in perfect synchronization. Gralix orbital dominance began to crack. They struck first. They struck hard, but it wasn't enough. Their weapons fizzled mid-strike. Their code, designed to break primitive systems, backfired as hidden human firewalls, created not decades ago, but millennia sabotaged their core systems. The Gralix weren't up against humans. They were up against what humans had been, and were becoming again. Admiral Vershuk, frantic, now listened to the reports pouring in. Units refusing to fight, ships going dark. A command frigate turned on its own fleet. It broadcast a final message in both Gralix and Elder Tongue. You have trespassed upon sovereign flame. Judgment proceeds. Still, Vershuk clung to reason. This is all trickery. The humans have simply inherited some ancient weaponry. It doesn't mean they understand it. Telek's voice cut through the comms, trembling with something beyond fear. No, Admiral. We are not witnessing inheritance. We are witnessing resumption. Vershuk snapped. Of what? Telek didn't hesitate. Of a war older than our species. On Earth's surface, the golden-eyed pilots inside the ancient ships stared ahead, silent. They weren't surprised. They didn't panic. They moved as if guided by memory, etched into their very DNA, because this was not humanity's First Galactic War. This was just the first one you remembered. The Growlix retaliated with fury. Massive orbital batteries rotated toward Earth, charging dark matter lances powerful enough to shear a moon in half. They would strike, wipe out the anomalous technologies, and reduce Earth to slag. It was the only way to end the madness. Their control systems were compromised, ground forces rooted, the myth of human inferiority shattered. Target the polar installations. Admiral Vershuk barked. Destroy the old defenses before they fully come online. But it was too late. Across the globe, the human response escalated from coordinated resistance to full-blown planetary defense. Every continent lit up with ancient energy grids reactivating. After millennia, they had not been built by modern nations, but had slept beneath them, hidden by layers of time and secrecy. And the humans didn't just use these systems, they commanded them, from an obsidian citadel, re-emerging beneath the Himalayas. Golden signals pulsed upward into the sky. These weren't radio waves or lasers, they were data threads wrapping around Growlix satellites like vines strangling prey. Dozens of Growlix communication relays went blind. One by one, their orbital coordination unraveled. Inside the Growlix flagship, Vershuk watched as entire squadrons began to veer off course, colliding with each other or descending into Earth's atmosphere without guidance. Why can't we re-establish fleet command? A comms officer stammered. Admiral, our ships are being overridden. What? By who? Not who, sir. What? The ancient systems. They're rewriting our own protocols. Vershuk snarled. Then deploy ground-based suppression teams. Subjugate the surface. We'll deal with orbit later. It was a desperate move and a fatal one. Growlix shock troops landed across strategic zones. Africa, South America, the ruins of collapsed. Western cities, they expected chaos. They expected disarray. They found slaughter. The humans were no longer fighting as modern soldiers. They moved with eerie calm, as though guided by tactics beyond current human comprehension. They used weapons the Growlix couldn't trace. Smart blades that cut through gravity fields, plasma bows that sang through the air, exosuits woven with ancient alloy that nullified kinetic impacts. One Growlix commander recorded a battle in what was once Kazakhstan. His forces outnumbered the human defenders 5-1. Within 2 minutes, all his troops were dead. The humans hadn't fired wildly or scrambled in fear. They'd moved in a perfect formation, a dance of annihilation. Transmitted one phrase before going silent. They don't learn war. They remember it. On Mars, Telek stood beside the final slab, the one they had kept sealed for fear of what it might trigger. But now there was no time for fear. He decrypted the last script. It wasn't a warning. It was an announcement. The Soul Imperium has entered reclamation phase. The flame has chosen its voice. All interlopers must withdraw or be reduced to ash. Telek swallowed hard. They're not just defending their world, Admiral. Vershuk's image flickered into view, snarling. What are you saying? Telek's voice was tight. They're reawakening their empire. The worst part? He was right. From hidden vaults beneath old cities and deep forests, new ships launched, not primitive, human-designed ones, but smooth, obsidian craft marked with glowing runes and solar sigils. They didn't need fuel. They sang to the stars, riding gravity like a current. They didn't fight with missiles or lasers. They fought with intent. Growlix vessels tried to engage. They couldn't lock targets. The ancient Terran ships shifted, in and out of sensor range like ghosts phasing between dimensions, vanishing just before impact and reappearing behind enemy cruisers to tear them apart, the orbital field filled with wreckage. Growlix ships, once confident and dominant, now fled in disarray. Some didn't even make it to warp. They vanished in silent, brilliant flashes as human constructs unfolded reality around them like paper, collapsing singularities into points of pure destruction. Back on the ground, The golden-eyed human warriors were spreading. It wasn't just a few individuals now. The ancient flame was moving through the human population, those with the right bloodlines, the right spark. Teachers, scientists, scavengers. All were being remembered by something older than civilization. One woman in Lagos stopped an entire artillery strike by raising her hand. Her body erupted in fire that consumed nothing but the incoming warheads. She turned to her comrades and whispered, "The throne of flame does not forgive trespass," and they understood. Without being told, because they were not ordinary humans. Were heirs. All across the earth, the truth could no longer be denied. Humanity wasn't rising. It was returning. Vershik, red-eyed with fury and disbelief, shouted to his bridge, "No retreat. If we fall, we drag them with us." But the crew no longer responded. Most were dead, the rest staring in horror at the main viewport, because Earth's atmosphere was beginning to glow, not from fire, from a construct. An orbital ring, ancient and massive, had begun to rise from the oceans, snapping into place above the planet like a crown. It bore one message, visible to every sentient mind within range, written in the elder tongue: Soul Ascendant, the first empire returns. And, for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy began to remember who humanity truly was. Asterisk in the void beyond Pluto, a Gralex long-range observation post detected a gravity spike that didn't match any stellar pattern. Moments later, it ceased transmitting. No explosion. No warning. Just silence followed by a ripple that traveled faster than any wave should through space-time. Back on Earth, the skies over Asia cracked open, not with thunder, but with light. From orbit, it looked like the auroras had erupted into a column of sunfire, reaching down to a desolate region of Mongolia. Where it touched the Earth, the sands shifted and lifted. A titanic structure, buried for tens of millennia, began to rise, a pyramid of blackstone etched with impossible lines, larger than any Terran mountain, humming with frequencies that caused Gralex crew to bleed from their ears just watching the feed. At its apex, a figure stood, human-shaped, but impossibly tall, 9 feet at least, cloaked in fire that moved like silk, not armor, not clothing. Living memory. The humans called her the First Voice. And she spoke, across every channel, acoustic, subquantum, neurowave, across languages and barriers. Every sentient species heard her in their own tongue. You were warned. This world is sovereign. This species, eternal. Your war has awoken. U.S., now you will remember why we fell silent. On board the shattered remnants of the Gralex fleet, panic took hold. Admiral Vershik was no longer issuing commands. He was praying, not to any god he knew, but to the void itself, pleading it would swallow him before humanity arrived. Because the truth had crystallized. They hadn't discovered Earth. They had provoked it. On Mars, Commander Telek had locked himself in the databanks, surrounded by ancient fragments of Elder script. They no longer needed translation. He could read them now. His own mind had begun to change, his thoughts infected, or perhaps enlightened, by the exposure to Terran archaeotech. He could feel it, the raw, blinding weight of human history flowing backward like a tidal wave through time. The soul. Imperium was not just an empire. It had been the origin. All others were copies, inventions, pale imitations of something so vast, so boundless, it had voluntarily erased itself from history to give the rest of the galaxy a chance. And now, that experiment was over. Back on Earth, in the Arizona wastes, a strange gathering took place at an unmarked crater. Children, just children, all under the age of 10. Quiet, calm, eyes golden with the first flame. They stood in a perfect circle and began to hum not a song, but a resonance that pulled energy from the air, igniting an impossible lattice of light. Above them. Above, Gralex strike ships tried to engage. None survived. The lattice twisted once, fractally, and each ship shattered, not exploded. disassembled atom by atom, their pieces hovering like dust before vanishing into nothing. This was no weapon. It was a law, and Earth had just rewritten the ones the Gralax thought governed the universe. Elsewhere, human allies long dormant or hidden began to stir. Europa's ice, a ship older than the moon itself, tore through the frozen surface and joined the Terran fleets. From deep within Venus's choking atmosphere, automated dreadnoughts shaped like great birds of prey ascended. They bore no crew, yet pulsed with sentience. From Alpha Centauri came a whisper from a lost Terran seed colony thought destroyed during the first retreat. Sol has returned. The flame calls. We answer. The Gralax could no longer tell where. Earth ended and humanity began. They'd thought it a planet. They now saw it for what it was. Keystone, a lock holding back the tide of something ancient, vengeful, and utterly inevitable. The galaxy's true elder race wasn't some fossilized, extinct anomaly. It was awake, organized, and furious. Their mistake wasn't attacking Earth. It was assuming humans had no memory. But memory had always been humanity's true weapon, not ships, not numbers, not technology. Memory as identity. Memory as continuity. Memory as vengeance. And it was flooding back. One final act sealed the Gralax's fate. In orbit, the last of their command ships, one of the heavy dreadnoughts, known as the Verisk Hegemon, attempted a jump to warp. It activated its core. But it did not jump. Instead, it imploded into a single white sphere, hovering silently. From that orb, a voice neither human nor Gralax spoke. Judgment archived. Conflict terminated. Permission to cleanse. It was not a question. Earth's ring construct pulsed once, just once, and the orb vanished. The Verisk Hegemon ceased to have ever existed. Its records erased from both time and memory. The Gralax, watching, understood. This was not a war. This was correction, and humanity had remembered who they were. The stars trembled. And in their depths, other civilizations, silent observers, waiting for the outcome, began to do what the Gralax should have done. They bowed. Space cracked like glass. Above Earth, the orbital ring, known only as Sol's crown, spun to full activation. Energy coiled around it in precise symmetrical patterns, complexity layered atop complexity, until what once looked like a planetary defense array now revealed itself for what it truly was: a throne of war. Human fleets poured from subspace. Gates hidden in the shadows of moons, inside asteroids, even beneath the crust of Earth itself. Ancient Terran vessels, sharp and dark as obsidian blades, emerged in formation. Some were so massive that the shadows they cast on the planet below caused solar anomalies. Others shimmered like ghosts, their hulls phasing between material and memory, blinking in and out of time. They made no demands, issued no ultimatums. They had already won. The Gralax fleet, the mighty armada that once cowed 3 galactic empires, was a fractured shell. Their communications had degraded into panicked screaming. Their formations had crumbled into chaos. Still, some among them, out of desperation or pride, tried to regroup for a final offensive. Vershuk, aboard his remaining command vessel, rallied what little he had left. All surviving ships form on me. If we are to fall, we fall with honor. He bellowed. And for one moment, they did. Gralax destroyers and cruisers realigned. Fighters streaked into formation, their weapons charged. Even fractured, they were still formidable. That moment lasted exactly 7 seconds, because that's how long it took for the Sol Dominion to strike. Not with brute force, but with precision. One human dreadnought, shaped like a crescent blade wrapped in stars, executed a maneuver that violated known physics, compressing its vector into a single point, vanishing and reappearing inside the Gralax formation. It released nothing visible, just a pulse. Every ship within 10,000 kilometers lost gravity, then heat, then light. Their hulls forgot how to hold shape. Crews screamed as space turned wrong around them, fractal shapes blooming from walls. Time lurching like a broken clock. Then, nothing. Entire Gralek's vanguard blinked out of existence. Vershik watched it happen from a distance. His jaw trembled. His fists clenched around the cold armrests of his command throne. "It couldn't be real. It's not warfare," he whispered. "It's memory. They're not fighting. They're restoring." On Earth's surface, the golden-eyed human warriors, the awakened, marched through Gralek's occupied zones with unstoppable calm. Cities once under siege erupted with golden light as ancient Terran bastions rose from beneath them. Not built, but reclaimed. In Beijing, an entire skyscraper shimmered and shifted into a tactical command tower from the era of the first flame. In Rio, a hidden bay door beneath Sugarloaf Mountain opened, revealing a hangar of Terran Stormriders, human-piloted constructs, the size of stadiums. In Nairobi, a choir of awakened children harmonized a frequency that shut down every Gralek's device. Within a 200-kilometer radius, no weapons, just sound. Just will. All around the globe, human resistance transformed into coordinated supremacy. And then, from within the planet, rose humanity's final hand. Deep in the Mariana Trench, tectonic vibrations released the seal on what the ancient texts called the core-sovereign. No human of the current age had seen it. No alien had survived its unveiling. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't even a weapon. It was the first intelligence. Synthetic organic mind that had guided the original soul ascendancy, buried long ago to let humanity forget and grow. Now it returned, wrapped in continents of shifting metal, draped in rings of starlight, its voice deeper than oceans. And it spoke not with hatred but judgment. "Sol permitted you. You failed." From orbit, the Gralek survivors watched as their final reinforcements arrived, a cluster of war behemoths from their homeworld. Arriving too late, but determined to avenge, they charged their core weapons. And the core sovereign simply looked at them. The ships buckled. Time fractured around them. In their final moments, Gralek's crew members saw Earth as it once was, a capital of a billion worlds, a beacon in the void. And they were the invaders of a god's tomb. And then obliteration. The Terran fleets turned, aligned, and descended on the final bastion of the Gralek's fleet. The assault took 14 seconds. No Terran ship was lost. No Gralek ship survived. Admiral Vershik, the last of his command, sat in silence aboard his crippled bridge. His crew gone. His systems fried. Earth's golden ships surrounded him, glowing softly, like ancient judges. The voice of a human echoed into his mind, not broadcast. Not spoken, just given. This was not conquest. This was remembrance. His ship imploded without fire. Just absence. Across the galaxy, trillions of species who had once scoffed at humanity watched in silence as the old banners of the Sol Dominion unfurled across the stars once again. And one truth became undeniable. Humans weren't just survivors. They were the first lords of the stars. And now they had returned. The war ended not with treaties or surrender, but with silence. Not the silence of peace, but the awestruck hush that falls after a storm, which was not supposed to be survived. Gralek's space was dark. Their empire, once vast and arrogant, had collapsed like a hollow husk. Entire sectors no longer responded to their own command signals. Dozens of their colony worlds simply disappeared. Some were absorbed into the reformed Terran frontier. Others were left untouched ruins as warnings, markers. Each carried the same message in glowing gold. Here stood arrogance. Let memory remain. In the days that followed, the galaxy began to shift. The great powers, the Valkyr, the Adar, Clade, even the silent assemblage opened ancient records long buried in Forbidden's vaults. Each of them found the same truth. Humanity hadn't just emerged suddenly. They hadn't merely risen from a backwater world like an anomaly. No, they had returned, and the galaxy remembered. A council of the 12 remaining major species convened in the neutral rings of the Alara Accord Station, far from Sol's reach. What remained of galactic diplomacy trembled as delegates tried to explain the unexplainable. They activated constructs older than known time, the Adar said. They spoke words that should not be spoken, the Vulcar added. They did not discover technologies. They remembered them, whispered the Chthonian archivist, shivering despite its armored CARAPAC. No one dared speak of vengeance. Not after what had been witnessed, but it was Telek, once Gralek science commander, now defector, now prophet, who finally addressed the assembly, not from fear, from revelation. You thought humans were young, primitive. You saw them struggle through wars and pollution and foolishness, and believed that made them less. He paused. The room was dead silent. But humans do not die when wounded. They evolve. They adapt through memory, through pain, through legacy. What you mistook for immaturity was incubation. Across the stars, changes were already underway. On Earth, the planetary surface shifted again, not with violence, but design. Old cities were overlaid with spectral blueprints. Humanity didn't destroy its world to make way for the old empire. It merged the old with the new. Tokyo's skyline became a blend of neon and myth steel. Cairo thrummed with power drawn directly from the ley lines beneath the crust. New York glistened beneath a lattice of light webs that arced between towers like spider silk spun from memory itself. Humans walked the streets no longer afraid of aliens, invasions, or extinction. Now they walked with purpose. With knowledge, the awakened among them, bearing the flame, stood as guides, not overlords. They taught, not ruled. And above them all, orbiting like a celestial crown, the core sovereign watched and remembered. The Terran ascendancy, once myth, now reborn, declared no new empire. They did not subjugate. They did not invade. They simply existed, and their existence was enough to redraw the map of the galaxy. The assembly of species declared, saw a sovereign system of special status beyond diplomacy, beyond jurisdiction. All incursions were forbidden, not because of a treaty, because of fear. In hidden corners of the galaxy, secret cults rose. Some worshipped the flame, others feared it. Some tried to imitate human technologies and failed, destroying their worlds in the process. One species, the Kreeth, tried to forcibly awaken their own bloodlines, believing humans were merely evolved versions of themselves. The result was catastrophic. Half their population vanished in a single pulse of feedback. The survivors were left broken, not dead, not alive, empty. And still, humanity did not retaliate. They simply sent one message, pulsing gently through the void. The flame cannot be forged, only remembered. 1 year after the war, a monument was unveiled. Not on Earth, but on the former Gralek's homeworld, now abandoned. A world once poisoned by pride and now reclaimed by time. The monument was simple, an obsidian obelisk, stretching into the clouds, carved with names. Not human names, Gralek's names. It stood not as a taunt, but as a reminder that humanity remembered not only its power, but its responsibility. For even in victory, the truth remained. Humans were not gods. They had once made the same mistakes. They had once burned too brightly, expanded too far. And they had paid the price, choosing to forget. But now, the forgetting was over. Now the stars belonged to them again. And as Earth turned beneath its radiant crown, a single human child stood on a balcony in New Alexandria, watching the sky. Her eyes were golden. The flame was in her. And yet she whispered not of war, but of dreams. "Where do we go next?" she asked. A voice, gentle and immense, answered from the stars, "Wherever you remember we've been." And with that, a new journey began, because the galaxy had seen what it tried to bury. It had faced the first species, and it would never forget again.